So last week we ended with a bit of a discussion on engaged Buddhism, and I actually discussed our discussion with Ayya Brahmavara, and she sent me a link to a recent talk that she had given on the same topic. So I thought that would follow on nicely to listen to that tonight and then have more of a discussion. So I'll just get her talk going.
Welcome back, everybody. I'd like to take the opportunity now to share some words on Dhamma, and I'll leave some time at the end of this session for any questions, a little bit of interactive time, and we'll close with the closing homage. So I'd like to begin this talk with paying homage to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. So I was speaking a little bit in the guided meditation about peace, and how we can, through our meditation practice, we can bring a little bit more peace into the world. And as many of you will know, the theme for the Dhammadharani Aranya Bodhi community this Vasa has been that of, the title is Stop the War. And we could also say it's an investigation of how to bring peace into the world. And we've been considering many teachings of the Buddha that relate to sort of pacifying all the causes of strife and conflict in the world. And when I say in the world, of course, I'm not really talking about out there. As Buddhist practitioners, we have a different sense of the world, many of us. The Buddha said famously that this world is to be found within this body and mind, within the fathom-long, this sort of frame, this sort of form that we carry. This is the world. And in many ways, he elucidated this teaching. You know, what is the world for us? It is what we see, what we hear, smell, taste, touch, and think. What else can we know of the world? How do we receive the world? Only through these six senses. It's interesting to consider this, isn't it? Because we do have a sense of a vast, you know, global community, and the material world, the earth that we live on, so vast. There's so much going on. It's inconceivable for our little minds to be able to encompass, you know, all the happenings of this world. The gods perhaps can do this. They have that kind of ability to perceive, to comprehend, to take in huge amounts of information. But for us, it's this is a concept. The world is a concept, the external world, geography and so forth. It's all concepts in our minds, isn't it? And we can only be in one place at a time. And it's here. It's always here. We're embodied beings, and we have minds that are you know, they're incredible, amazing, but also limited in certain ways. So truly the world that we perceive out there is actually right here. And we know about, don't we, the external world through what we take in through the senses, the news, the information, the sights, the sounds, and all the concepts. And it all comes here. And this is where it, you know, sort of hits this chitta, this heart, this mind. And really, we have the choice, don't we, to either make peace, experience harmony, experience well-being, or to experience suffering and strife and agitation. And it really is down to us, you know. And we can get a bit confused sometimes because we might feel, well, there's so much suffering out there, you know, virtually whole countries undergoing great vicissitudes because of climate issues, floods and fires and so forth. This is terrible and impactful for us, and war happening. Terrible, shocking, unbelievable suffering happening for no good reason when it comes to human-made suffering on such a vast scale. We can feel very impacted by this, perhaps even more impacted in a way, because it's not necessary. We feel, well, it's in our hands to some extent. Some forms of suffering are, yes, created by us, by human beings. But whatever the cause, and actually the climate issues, we could say also, oh gosh, you know, we humans, we're creating all of this. And we can feel very, very, perhaps guilty, perhaps responsible, perhaps involved in all of these causes of strife and distress, despair and suffering. And we can get confused into thinking that we should suffer because there's so much suffering in the world. To me, that's a very reasonable kind of confusion. How can I be happy? How can I be at peace when there's so much that's not happy and peaceful in the human realm, in the animal realm, all around me? But actually, the Buddha is very clear in his teachings. It's really important for us to take responsibility for the happiness and peace that we can allow, that we can bring in to the world. And this is a great offering for us to be able to not add to the suffering of samsara, not add more agitation, more upset and more despair to what is already suffering, but actually to bring in well-being, to bring in peace. And it's not the same as ignoring or indifference, turning away from the world. Not at all. It's a real call. The Buddha's teaching and this path of practice is a real call for us to actually open up, be present, be aware of what's happening in the world, and to accept, make peace with, understand through investigation what's actually happening here. And we have certain choices, don't we? We can choose, you know, how much news to take in, how much to be connecting to the wider field of events, And I really feel that, this choice is one that we can apply wisdom to, apply our discernment, apply the precepts to this choice that we can make about how much we take in of the world around us. And let's notice, when we hear painful, difficult, upsetting news, what's happening then right here? And the Christians practice this very beautiful practice they call intercession, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, to be very conscious, very open and very aware of what's happening around, and to bring it into the life of prayer, to pray for those who are in distress, to dedicate to those who are in need of support, of help. And the sense is that this way of sharing and praying and wishing well has a tremendous power. And if we Buddhists don't talk about intercession and we don't pray, but we practice metta, bhavana, we practice loving kindness, don't we? We are encouraged by the Buddha to uproot the defilements, to work with greed, with hatred, with confusion, and to understand the causes of these defilements and to let them go. And then to cultivate a heart that is free from suffering, to generate loving kindness, to generate compassion, joy, and equanimity, these divine abidings. And to me, this is very similar to the Christian concept of intercession, that we can kind of turn things around. Ajahn Brahma wrote a wonderful book, didn't he? Titled something like, "Who delivered this cartload of dung, this cartload of manure, this truck of manure," something like that. Who's to blame? Who's delivered this, all this horrible stuff? We read the news and it can feel like a delivery of very, very unwanted, unpleasant, disgusting, appalling material. But what do we do as practitioners? Whatever we receive, it's grist for the mill, isn't it? It's the manure that we can put into the garden, we can put on the compost, and we can watch it nourish and fertilize the ground. We can turn things around, and it's actually a kind of duty for us. It's our responsibility. It's our call from the Buddha, not to add to the suffering, but to come out of suffering, to let go of suffering, to see the way to peace and well-being. And a happiness that is not shaken by the conditions around us. So, this way of practice is a way of bringing peace into the world. And it makes a difference. It's a contribution that is not measurable, is it? It's not obvious. It's not, it's very quiet. It's invisible. It's unobtrusive. There's effacement in that. Our practice is one of letting go of overt influence, of arguing, of disputing, of judging or blaming, and simply being present, to simply be present and to observe experience, which is absolutely what we do in meditation practice, isn't it? Is to offer peace into the world. And you know, it's not a passive thing. We're not really pacifists, I would say, Buddhist practitioners. We are practitioners of non-violence, though. There's the clear boundary. Whenever we take the precepts, every day as we practice the precepts, we practice harmlessness. We are strongly motivated, aren't we, to avoid any kind of hurt or harm to ourselves and to others. So, you know, we're living in a realm where there's a tremendous amount of, or lack of, understanding of the danger of harming others, harming oneself. There's a tremendous unconsciousness around this, around the consequences of this. And so we do actually, I would say, experience hurt and harm in this world. And we just have to pick up a paper actually, or read the news, or turn on the TV and watch the news. And there's hurt and harm happening, which is why it's very helpful to just really be careful about how much we inflict this kind of hurt and harm on ourselves, to be kind to ourselves, not to ignore, not to be indifferent, as I said, but rather to just notice the effect of what we hear, see, smell, taste, touch, and think, and to be responsible about that. And so we can experience, you know, in the world around us, we interface with the world. We're porous, we're open, we receive hurt and harm because it's a field of suffering that we're in. And how to work with that, how to be able to let the suffering stop right here, how not to create any more pain and strife than what's already in the field. And this is a work. This is a work of intercession, to be able to take responsibility for our suffering, for the suffering here. Whatever comes in through the six senses becomes part of our world. Can we investigate this world and uproot and let go of all the causes of suffering that are here? And of course, you know, as we know, and we can begin to really experience and understand from the Lord Buddha, there is no self, there is no personal, there is no separate, there is no segregated piece of the world here that I can say is me or mine, that is myself. This is the truth. And so there is no separation between what's going on in the wider field and this experience right here. That's how porous we are. That's how much we're part of samsara. And let us learn, you know, from every experience, from every thing that we receive, everything that bubbles up within, every reaction to what we hear, see, smell, taste, touch, and think. Every time we are affected, every time we can experience any kind of aversion or desire, pull towards or push away from anything, this is our opportunity to bring a little bit more peace into the world, to let go of suffering. And we've been very interested here at Dhammadharani to investigate the causes of strife and conflict that we can experience directly ourselves in our lives. You know, the times that we have a quarrel with someone, or we have an issue with someone or something. We have, in short, some kind of reactivity, some kind of liking or rather disliking that comes up for us. We can say we're triggered by something. There's heat, there's reactivity, we have a problem. Every time that happens, we can get really interested in that, because this is our most direct way of bringing peace into the world. When there's something here that's threatened or that's undermined, a sense of things not being quite right, a sense maybe of needing to put things right, wanting to do something, to sort it out, and so forth. These energies can be very compelling, but always as practitioners, as followers of the Buddha's teachings, we want to, rather than allowing ourselves to get caught up in whatever energy it is that's flowing within us, we want to be very still within, don't we? Become very still and really pay attention to that which is not at peace, that which is agitated, that which is reactive, that which wants to do something, to put it right, to change things, to, in a way, interfere with the way things are. And again, I'm not saying we should sit around doing nothing and be completely passive and not contribute in action sometimes in the world. Not at all. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that when we have reactivity in the heart, this is not a time to act. This is not a time to allow that momentum to move into speech or action. No, this is the time to be still and to observe and investigate the suffering. And it's a great opportunity, isn't it, to develop wisdom, to develop restraint, to develop patience. We need to notice when we're not at peace, and we need to address that as an urgent priority. Nothing else is more important. And only when we have made peace, and there's the stillness within, there's the coolness, there's the non-reactivity, which we know the flavor, the taste of this equanimity. Only when that is our state of being can we actually speak and act in a way that's going to provide some benefit. And isn't the sense then at such times, it's not really like there's anybody there. It's just right action, right speech are possible. So our work of peacemaking, our work of avoiding conflict is a really kind of imminent, constant, continuous work. Because until we're arahants, until we're fully liberated, we will be reacting. We will experience liking and disliking. We will experience a sense of something here that has a relationship with something out there. And it's all good. It's all very fine, because this is our way, this is our path. This is our opportunity to continue to purify the heart. It's through the suffering, isn't it? It's through the sense of unease that we can actually move toward greater peace and happiness. And we've been investigating conflict. We've been investigating the sources of conflict in community, in our own lives. where peace is directly, you could say, threatened or shattered or uprooted by some kind of reactivity, some kind of problem. And it's very interesting to take in all the Buddhist teachings around the causes of strife. And I'm really struck actually by so many suttas where it's very clear that the Buddha is pointing to views and opinions, the mind that judges as the cause of all the strife in this world. And what brings in this kind of energy for us? Investigating more deeply, elucidating more clearly, the Buddha tells us it's because of wanting and not wanting that all the strife in the world comes about. So the beginning of strife is some kind of desire or aversion. And what does it do if it's not seen with wisdom, if it's not understood and let go of? These glimmerings, these hints, these very subtle, perhaps, degrees of liking and disliking will grow into some kind of a energy propelling speech, propelling action, propelling thoughts that are tinged with ignorance, tinged with desire, tinged with aversion, that will lead us inexorably, if we follow them, into some kind of dispute, some kind of quarrel. Quarrel with what? Well, quarrel with reality. And it can be a quarrel with people, a quarrel with situations. We can even get mad at objects, can't we? Get mad with objects and throw them around. It can, you know, project onto anything at all. But the sense of unease, disquiet, an argument with reality is the result of unseen, unmet, not understood desire or aversion or confusion. So our job is so clear to us, really, from the teachings of the Buddha. Our job is to be very sharp, very alert, very vigilant, and to notice the beginning of any kind of wanting at all, any kind of not wanting at all, to see and catch and kind of prune it as soon as we can, as quickly as we can. Because we can appreciate, can't we, as practitioners, that these qualities of unpeacefulness, the qualities of having some kind of argument, having some kind of conflict, having some kind of disquiet in the mind, in the heart, are ubiquitous. Until we're arahants, we all have to deal with the causes of conflict, the causes of strife. We're not different from others. People who are fighting over there, or, you know, grabbing what they can over here. We're not different. We're maybe, could say, if we have all the resources that we need, easily accessible, we're much more liable to be peaceful and to look across at places where there's a lack, there's a survival struggle going on, and feel, you know, somehow different from people who are fighting, struggling and striving to get their share, to get their peace, to get enough to survive. But of course, if we strip away all the supports, the wealth and the privilege, then we really get a chance to see human nature and what we're dealing with, and how very challenging it can be for us all when we're under stress, when we're hungry, when we're thirsty, when we don't have some space just to be. So it's very humbling, really, isn't it, to see that, we all have these drives, this potential to rise up and create harm, unless we're very careful. And it's interesting how even when we have very privileged lives, and we're not really struggling on a basic level to survive, we still have suffering. We have the luxury, actually, don't we, of seeing how we suffer in so many other ways. And we can pay attention to that. And all our efforts can be directed towards making peace, being willing to observe suffering and not act on it, and not be driven by it, not be duped by it, into creating more of it, letting it stop right here. This is really our great opportunity. There's a beautiful sutta in Majjhima Nikaya that I'm looking at the moment. It's called Portalia Sutta, and it's Majjhima number 54, I think. It's a conversation between the Buddha and an elderly gentleman called Portalia. And Portalia is a man who has lived a very full life. He's been successful. He's come to sort of retirement age. And he's done a great thing. He's given up all his wealth. He's given it away already to his children. And he's just requested from them that they give him enough to survive. But the other great thing that he's done is he's given up all involvement in worldly affairs. No more judgments, no more decisions. And he's living the life of a renunciant to a certain extent. He goes to see the Buddha. They're meditating in a wood, a forest, and he finds the Buddha in this forest, and he approaches him. And the Buddha addresses him as a householder and says, come and sit down, householder. And Portalia is quite put out by this, because he feels he's not a householder, he's a renunciant. And 3 times, actually, the Buddha addresses him as a householder. And in the end, he gets a bit shirty, and he says to the Buddha, actually, I'm not a householder. Can't you see? Can't you tell? I'm a renunciant. I've given up all my wealth and property, and I've given up all judgment. And the Buddha says to him, well, the fact that you're wearing shoes and carrying an umbrella and wearing lay clothes was why I called you a householder. And actually, giving up decision-making around what to do with your wealth and how to run your house and your family is not a real giving up of judgment, Portalia. Can I tell you how to give up judgment? And Portalia's interested, and he asks the Buddha to say more about judgment, the judging mind, and how to give up judgment. And it's a really powerful teaching the Buddha gives, because he says to Portalia, there are just these causes of judging, and these causes are to be let go of. They are to be put aside. This is how to practice skillfully To give up judgment is definitely the direction that we want to move in. And the Buddha said these causes of judgment, we could say of views and opinions, we could say thereby of conflict and strife and disagreement with others. The causes are killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. These first three, of course, they're the first three precepts. So it's interesting to consider that causes of judgment, having a judgmental or a critical mind, can lie in the way that we're living our lives. And if we're living our lives in such a way that we ourselves are causing harm or acting in unwholesome ways, this is a cause for us to judge and criticize others. So that's very interesting to consider. One could perhaps consider that conversely, if we're living lives that are harmless, perhaps then it gives us the opportunity to not be so swayed or overwhelmed by judgmental thoughts, critical thoughts towards ourselves, towards others. Perhaps it gives us more of an opportunity to investigate the tendency to judge and criticize, and to be able to work with that and to let go of that. So these first three are very good to consider. If we keep a sila, if we live virtuous lives, perhaps we're less likely to experience these. But the Buddha went on to say there are other causes of having a judgmental mind, and they are divisive speech, speaking in such a way that we cause disharmony externally, you could say, or even within ourselves. Also telling lies, being dishonest in our speech. So again, unskillful speech. Creating disharmony. It's interesting also that we can consider that if we speak in ways that are harmful, we're more likely to nourish and feed that tendency to have a critical, judgmental mind. Like a kind of vicious circle, isn't it? What we say, what we think, we can kind of reaffirm unskillful ways of thinking and speaking through actually acting in those ways. We can strengthen the defilements, can't we, when we indulge in them, and when we work to let go of the defilements, to see through them, to uproot them, then we can diminish these tendencies. So again, sila, right speech, helps us to let go of critical, judgmental ways of promoting or promulgating our views and opinions, and thereby creating conflict. Other causes of a judgmental mind, the Buddha said, greed and desire and lust, wanting. It's like two sides of the coin, isn't it? If we have a mind of desire, we also have a mind of aversion. As much as we delight in, we're going to be critical of. You can't have one without the other. So it's very important and often spoken of by the Buddha, this understanding that greed and desire are causes of conflict, both directly and also indirectly. Directly, we try to get what we want, and it can mean that we're hurting and harming others in the process. We can be covetous of others' property. We can be wanting to expand our territory to get more resources, and so thereby directly causing harm to others. But also the tendency toward greed is also feeding and nourishing the tendency towards aversion. Other causes of a judgmental mind, the Buddha said blaming and insulting. So again, we can kind of get into the vicious circle. The more critical we are, the more blameful, the more we have the tendency to put our suffering out onto others, then the more that grows. That tendency will grow, and we'll be blaming and judging and arguing all the more. The other causes of a judgmental mind, there are two more. The Buddha said anger. Anger and arrogance. Arrogance. And there's so much I could say, but there's also, only so many words and time is short. But I'd like to invite you to consider these two. Anger as a cause of a judgmental mind, and arrogance, that sense of superiority, that sense of knowing anything at all, that conviction that our thoughts are right because they're ours, and so forth. And the Buddha went on in this simile to speak very clearly in a number of similes that you'll all be familiar with about the dangers of sense desire. And he's really pointing to the fact that this is the root of all those 8 causes of judgment. We need to go deeper, look beyond the anger, the arrogance, the blaming and insulting. Look beyond the judgmental mind, beyond the tendency to act in harmful ways and not keep precepts. Look beyond all of that, and what do we find? We find the roots of all this suffering, wanting and not wanting. And so the Buddha spoke about the similes for sense desire. I won't go into them now, but just very briefly touch upon the comparison the Buddha made between sense desire and a dog chewing at a piece of old bone, trying to get nourishment out of it. Impossible to get nourishment out of this old bone. A crow with a piece of meat, trying to keep it for itself. And what happens? All the other birds come along and peck at it and attack it until it has to drop that piece of meat. Sense desire like a grass torch, standing in the wind, blowing the flames onto us. Like a pit of coals being dragged along to be fried on the pit of coals. The tree laden with fruit that will be enticing to so many others that we may climb the tree to get the fruit. And what will happen? Somebody down below will start chopping it down. All these similes and more, really bringing home for us the danger, the strife, the fear, the trepidation in sense desire.
Okay, I'm going to pause it there. I will give the link so that you can listen to the last. There's probably only 5 or 10 minutes left, but I want to leave time for some discussion. So what she started off with sort of a basic tenet of creating peace within ourselves, so that if we become socially engaged in some way, that we're doing that with the quality of equanimity. And Thich Nhat Hanh, he also talks about this in one of his early books, Peace is Every Step. He talks about, first of all, developing peace within yourself, and then developing peace within your immediate family. And then once you've achieved that, then to go out in the world and be engaged in social action in a peaceful way. Okay, so let's open it up for some discussion. Everybody looking studiously at the floor.
Stuff to digest.
It would be rather difficult to find peace within yourself first before you find peace in your family and then go out into the world. Because I think finding peace in yourself would take a very long time.
Yeah, Roddy was saying that he's concerned about the finding peace within yourself taking a very long time before you then go out into the world. Yeah, but I really think it is the most effective way, to be heard when you're doing social action. I think of people that I've met in my socially active time, when you had people that were sort of ranting, it was just so different than people who came from a place of peace. I was just very attracted to those who were coming from a place of peace. Yeah, so I think it's the most effective way to be. So I'm just saying, I guess, that I agree with the teachings of the Buddha. Thank you. You're in the wheelie chair, so that's good.
Probably harder to move like that. I'm just remembering a woman that I knew in my Quaker days, Ursula Franklin, who was quite well known as a peace activist. I can think of no one who was more peaceful within herself than Dr. Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
She always acted out of a groundedness and a sense of solidity, a sense of real peace. Mm-hmm. She did nothing, said nothing without considering it in silence first. Of course, silence to Quakers is a very important thing. Mm-hmm. The Canadian Friends Service Committee always worked after group meditation and always worked out of a sense of peace. And the people that we knew who were socially active in the Toronto meeting of the Society of Friends were the most effective ones, were certainly the ones who were really grounded in silent worship. And therefore, were exactly doing what the Buddha, they had sila. They had, there was always sila before dana. Mm-hmm. And the two are so connected. But yeah, I understand what she's saying, and I can connect it to some word.
Yeah. The Buddha was teaching truths, and so different groups have also discovered those same truths. Yeah.
I find for myself, in my experience, just lately, like the past month, the more peace that I find within myself, the more I don't even have to have right speech, that people just, they just level up to my peace. Mm-hmm. It's kind of cool. Like even family members that I haven't spoken to for a long time, or I can feel the shift in their vibration, and I don't even have to do anything except for just do my work. It's really cool. It's like they're inevitably affected by it, in this interweb that we're all connected, that we are one. Mm-hmm. That is just, it's really beautiful. I mean, yeah.
Thanks.
So what does it mean by finding peace? Clarity on something, or
So Roddy's asking, what does it mean finding peace? And I think it's a subjective experience. I don't think it's anything mysterious. It's something you experience. You feel it. You know, it's not being tense or anxious or agitated. It's just feeling peaceful.
For me, it's not having panic attack after panic attack every day, not having mind attacks and then acting it out and then regretting what I said or what I did, and then, you know, my heart rate going fast or shaking. You know, to me, finding more pieces. You know, wake up with stability, wake up with equanimity. You know, and today was a little hard because I got a house and I was not equanimous. I don't know if that's a word, but it was very. But then I actually noticed the drop after, and I was like, oh, okay. I started getting the shakes and mind attacks, and you know, got into just engaged. I'm like, no, come back to the now, and yeah, for me, it's like finding peace and stability is the unknown for the experience that I've had this life. So like, I'm really trying to tell myself like the unknown is safe and stability is safe. Like it's okay to have a level life, you know, but it's like the body has been trained for 36 years for something to habitually happen. So I can feel in the body, even though I'm not aware of the thoughts, because they're getting more and more like closer to the bottom of the ocean, just kind of bubbling a bit. But I can feel the body sort of expecting something. And so I'm really telling myself over and over, lots of affirmations of it's safe to be stable. Like it's okay. The unknown is okay. And then hopefully the nervous system just rewires itself. But that's my experience with, you know, just a little bit of peace that I've just only recently been experiencing. So, yeah.
Thanks.
I just think that while we're on this path, we're working continuously on the neuroplasticity of our brains. We've worn these grooves into our brains that are like rivers through an entire lifetime of you know, anxiety or anger or whatever negative things that may pop up. From the moment you start meditating and kind of following this path, you're starting to change those neural pathways. It takes a long time, so the peace will come. You've got to rewire the whole brain, so it's a slow process.
you know, I think I just have like some reflection on. I haven't been meditating that long, but what I would have identified as peace 4 months ago, I would no longer identify as peaceful. So then, of course, I project that into the future, and I wonder, you know, am I experiencing peace of mind, or am I, you know, do I have the right self-awareness to really understand where I'm at and to have a positive influence? That's sort of like where my mind goes a bit.
Yeah. So Roddy's just mentioning that his definition of peace has been changing over time because I guess you're experiencing more and more sort of subtle aspects of it. Yeah, which is just par for the course. Yeah. Yeah, we can only know, you know, what we know at the time, but if we keep doing the practice, then we do become aware of things on a much more subtle basis.
I mean, this taught me a lot, thinking about what I do that could influence, you know, if I'm not at peace, what I can do that can influence something bad without me knowing that I've done this. So I'm not the intention isn't there. But because I haven't taken care of my own self,
yeah,
you know, I could accidentally
yeah,
harm.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Roddy's, mentioning he's concerned about sort of unintentional harm with sort of unexamined behavior. Yeah, and I think, we're all, that's a possibility for all of us until we're awakened, until we sort of fully can see things, see reality. And so try not to be too freaked by that. Just know that you're on the path and that you're working towards making this better, right?
Yeah,
And
just a question. How can you effectively add I guess combine peace with assertiveness? Being assertive.
I think that's extremely possible. I did a lot of work with that in my career. So you use right speech, like you don't belittle people, you're not swearing, you're not yelling, but you might have to be like the broken record, where you just have to keep saying things again and again. But just using right speech. So absolutely, the Buddha is not asking us to be, carpets to be trod on, you can definitely be assertive. But just don't be assertive in an aggressive, wrong speech kind of way. Yeah.
And that's a skill.
Yeah.
My children test me.
Oh, thank you, children, for helping me.
Today I was like, stop crying. Like, this isn't working.
I was thinking about that today. Like I drive school bus for the school district here, and I've got 50 kids behind me. So to be peaceful, relaxed, and deal with some stuff. It's and not do it through wrong speech or or in a harming way. Just a respectful but firm way.
Okay, anything from our Zoom audience here? We're a little bit over time, but anything pressing before we come to an end here for tonight?
The camera looks cool. The way like Rich is highlighted. He's ready to speak tonight. Oh, it just looks cool.
Screen test.
I'll take you off the hook. Okay, we'll do our ending. So we're going to end with a reflection on loving friendliness, metta. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be loving. May you be calm. May you be safe. May no problems come to you. May no difficulties come to you. May no harm come to you. May you meet with spiritual success. May you have the patience, the courage, the strength, the determination, the inner clarity, and the wisdom to meet and overcome the inevitable problems in life, to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties in life, to meet and overcome the inevitable frustrations in life, to meet and overcome the inevitable failures in life. May the whole of our hearts be filled with loving friendliness. May every cell of our bodies be filled with loving friendliness. May every level of our consciousness be purified by loving friendliness. May we build a healthy, happy aura of loving friendliness all around us, through which no evil thought, word, or intention or any form of harm may penetrate, but from which loving friendliness may radiate in all directions. And may we be protected. May the merit of our practice be shared with all sentient beings, named and unnamed, like Lise, Blair, Kelly. May all beings be well and happy. Thank you, everyone.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Anumodana, everyone.
Good night.